Tremendous, tremendous, and that to me it speaks of who the man is. Like I say, he's as quality of a person that's ever walked a sideline in college football. The winningest coach ever, but the class in which he exemplifies himself with and what he represents is tremendous. And you know, it's funny. I say this story all the time. And back when in the late '80s, when I was a GA and learning to coach, and I used to sit around at the Bowden Academies, I was a senior advisor for the quarterbacks of that academy. And we sitting out back and just talking by the pool at night and whatever, and just every word they would say I would stand on just to try to learn and get a grasp of something. But he always said, you know, that whenever he left, he was going to get out of town and leave whoever the head coach. He said this 25 years ago because it happened to him one time in his career, and I saw it happen to Terry a little bit at Auburn when the old coaches hang around and they're always doubting and questioning. And he said, no matter who it was, it just happened to be me. It was unbelievable, but. You know, to me, it shows the class of the man and who he is and what he is. And like I say, he's as good a man as ever walked the sideline in college football.
Corey.
Jimbo, Rashad said that at halftime you told the team that Kermit was going to pop one on a kickoff return. What did you see from the first couple kick returns, and how well was that blocked? It
was blocked tremendously well, and we've worked on that. And he was close. If you remember, there was one right there in the first half. He got him by his shoelace getting down that sideline, and we felt very good about if we could get a return all week that we had an advantage in that department, that we could get a return, and we felt very comfortable with it. And I said, we're going to get one of those. We're going to get a good return. And I said, we just got to believe. And I told our team at halftime, we're right where we want to be. Because, things hadn't gone well, but you're down 21-10. You got the ball coming out second half. You're in a very good position. And you'll remember this because the things you remember, the things that are hard. You don't remember the things that come easy to you. You put them away because you don't appreciate them. And last night's win, you had to dig down and find out who you were. And that was going to be a win for our program. And I thought we were right where we wanted to be if we just take the bull by the horns and go compete in the game. And we did. But we felt we had a chance to pop one of those returns.
Heather.
Heather Dinich with ESPN.com. With so much NFL talent on your roster, can you give us any insight as to what next year's team might look like and how many of those conversations you might have and what that process is like?
I think it's going to look very similar to what you're seeing right now. I think this team will be very similar. I think there may be one or two I've got to have some serious conversations with because we got to get the right information, maybe three. But this team will be – this is an extremely young football team. We only have 3 seniors on offense, which is Chad Abrams, Brian Stork, and Kenny Shaw. That's the only seniors we have there. You got a couple guys there that possibly could leave, but I don't – maybe one. But on defense, you may have one, maybe 2. Could be maybe 3 guys max, I think, in the end of it when it really gets down to it. We got to have those conversations. But those guys are having a good time here. And we have some great young players coming in behind those guys. So I think this team will look very, very similar to the one you just saw.
Mark.
Jimbo, Mark Bradley from the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. We've seen in other sports, that, particularly in baseball, that adding another tier of playoffs adds to the uncertainty of a postseason. You having been a part of some 1 versus 2 games now and having won it last night, do you see the 2 versus 3 and the 1 versus 4 semifinals as adding more uncertainty and just opening it up even wider?
I definitely do. But here's the thing I think about this playoff we better be real careful about. When I was a child, I remember who won the Sugar Bowl, who won the Orange Bowl, who won the Cotton Bowl, who won the Rose Bowl. It was a big deal to go. We act like that's not a big deal now. That's one of the great things you have in college football. We're so involved in winning a championship that we're forgetting the tradition and history of doing things. And how many times was the BCS ever wrong? How many times did they ever get it wrong at the end? And I'm all for – because now we still got the same problem. You're going to argue over who's 4 and 5 just like you did over who's 2 and 3. I mean, what's the difference? And you keep building these games. Now you're playing 15 games. Now you're playing 16 games. And you want to go play 17 games. Well, how many scholarships you got? You need to start letting freshmen play 5 for 5 so you can have bodies to be able to – the attrition. These guys don't get to go play an NFL season. They don't get to go rehab all day. They got school. They got study halls. They got things to do. Those bodies at that age aren't developed like a man is. And they say, well, the lower divisions do it. Well, I'm going to tell you something. Just like the NFL is a much more physical game in Division I football, Division I football is significantly different than the 1AA, Division II, and Division III. Those collisions aren't the same size, speed guys that matter. And you better be careful what you're doing to these kids and how you're doing things. And then how are we going to recruit? You keep putting playoff games in there. When are we going to ever recruit? You start in December and finish in the middle of January. When's recruiting season go? I mean, you got a lot of things that we better be careful on this playoff system before we go crazy on it. But I'm for it. Hey, playoffs, that's what you're going to do. We're going to line up and play them. But I just don't want to take the true history and tradition of those bowl games, the significance of play. Maybe you're 11-2. That's a pretty good year. Now anymore, we act like somebody should get fired. It's a little bit ridiculous.
Dennis.
Jimbo, following up on that, I asked you Sunday about playing an extra game after this one. What kind of physical shape are you in right now? Could you go play?
You know, actually, we were very healthy. We came out of that game as physical as it was. We came out healthy. But again, you're flying back, rehab, bodies, now they're going to school. Now you got to fly back, start another semester, start the new semester, which is extremely tough going in for a group of guys. Now the freshmen got to do that twice in 1 year, whole new classroom, whole new thing. I mean, it's significant. Now, there's a lot going into this that is going to be factored. Winning this thing, it's going to be survival of the fittest. There's no doubt.
Right back here.
Jimbo, Jason Staples, NoleDigest.com. A couple things. One is the punt decision to actually do the reverse, not just the punt call. What led to that particular call? Because it looked like they were actually in punt safe, and you still managed to get it. And then secondly, we noticed it in the second half. You brought the towels back out. Was that a situation where you felt like maybe they were stealing signals?
They had a couple signals. They had some of our signals a couple times, and then we're getting to them. And that's that happens. If people do it, and that's our fault. You got to change them. I mean, constantly rotate them and be able to get them in different ways. That's part of the game. I don't have a problem with that. But the reverse, we thought the misdirection, they could get the flow, and we thought the angle on the backside and how they played the backside, we could definitely get the edge, especially with Carlos' speed and ability, and you put the ball in his hands of one of your best playmakers in that situation. And we had to change the momentum of the game. We were down 21-3. We had to get momentum. Momentum's critical in football games. We talk about X and O's and all that, but I'm going to tell you what, momentum, especially when you're 18-22, momentum and the psyche of the whole situation is critical, and we had to change the momentum. We weren't doing it on offense, we weren't doing it on defense, so we had to do it on special teams.
I know we have a question back on the riser.
How can you see that?
Hey, Coach. Jason Kahn from CBS in Tallahassee. You've been a part of some great games as an assistant and as a head coach. Would you say that was the best game you've been a part of?
It definitely ranks right there at the top, especially with the significance of what it meant and the stage it was on. It definitely ranks right there at the top. There's no doubt. That was a tremendous game by both teams. Both teams competed very hard in the game, and we were fortunate and very happy to come out on top.
Ivan.
Yeah, Ivan Mazel, ESPN.com. Jimbo, what lessons will you take from being at LSU in 04? Because it seemed like Nick ended up that season so unhappy and he left. And
he did. I mean, just that, you got to go back to ground zero, and you can't worry about expectations. You got to play it. And at that time, we were breaking in a new quarterback, too. That was part of that issue, too. You had a new quarterback coming in that year. But I think that's the thing. Once expectations get so high, it's not letting complacency set in. And I'm going to tell you what kids do and what fans do. Fans do, writers do, players do. It's human nature. You take winning for granted. You take success for granted. And how hard it is to grind and win football games. You can't lose that edge. If you ever lose that edge, that chip on your shoulder, you're just another team. I don't care how talented you are. And this team has to go back, get its own identity, get its own leadership, and develop that. And that's going to be our challenge now, is how hungry can you stay to be able to do it over and over again. And that's going to be the challenge, and that's going to be our mindset, and that's going to be my temperament going in to be able to set that stage so we can do that and stay on top of this and be very competitive at the top. But again, it's human nature to get complacent. Like I say, relief syndrome. I made an A on the test. Well, if I make an F on the next one, I get a C. It's no big. If I make a D, I get a B. I mean, that's our nature as humans. It's not to grind. It's not to push. That's why there's only one champion at the end. And to me, I think it's another stepping stone for our program and organization, and we have to take that next step, and I've got to set the tone for that from day one.
We're going to take two final questions. First one over here.
Jimbo, Danny Morales of Skyboat.com. With the history that FSU had to start the BCS, making the first 3 championship games, what does it mean for you to be able to finish out the BCS as a champion?
I mean, it's kind of fitting to me because Florida State was, like I said, I remember the SEC dominance for so long. The SEC couldn't get in. I was in the SEC. They said we wasn't good enough. It was Miami and Florida State every year. They had the teams. They were in it. The Nebraskas, the Oklahomas. The SEC couldn't get in it. But I think it's very fitting that Florida State's come full circle back. And like I say, maybe we don't play in the SEC, but we play in the South, and we got good football, and it's Florida State. It's like the reckoning. Things are getting back in order again.
Last question over here, Ira.
Ira Schofeld, Tallahassee Democrat. Jimbo, Jameis made a comment last night that you had thrown him out of a recent practice during 2-minute drill. You were so frustrated with the way he was playing. I mean, it might have been the last practice.
It was the one right before we came here.
What was going on? And I'm assuming you didn't really throw him out of practice.
Yes, I did. I did. I sat him in the locker room. But the mindset in which he had and the situation, understanding the gravity of how important 2 minutes is, and the decisions you make and how you go about your process. And the thing about 2 minutes you got to be real careful of, it's not about you. You can get so involved that you're going to win the game in 2 minutes. To me, the key to those is using all the weapons around you. And I think he did that in that game. And I think in how you manage the clock, how you manage the situation. And you're not always playing your opponent, you're playing the clock more than you're playing your opponent at the same time. It's number one, opponent's number two. And the decisions you make and the mindset you have to have going in, which he'd had all year. I just saw it drift, and you know, we had some points and he had some points, so it's good to be the king. He'll be the king one day. If he was in pro ball, he might have thrown the coach out, you know. But you know the thing about it though, and I say this, he waited for me as soon as we got off the field. We had a long discussion. We had it out, and that's how. I mean, he's an unbelievable guy to be able to process and transition and go right back. And it was not. It was his passion for wanting to do something. And it was just a point I thought I needed to make to him at the present time as a young guy. And like I say, sometimes, you know, you have to be their coach. You can't be their friend. We'll be friends and respect later on, just like when you're a parent sometimes. You can't be, it's not your job to be your kid's friend. And that's probably part of our problem in the world today. We want to be our kids' friends and not be their parents and make them do what's right. Because in the end, so he can be on a stage like this and handle this moment and be able to do what he did in that situation. And he learned from it, he grew from it, and I grew from it. I grow from those situations every time how I handle them with those guys too. And wish he didn't have to do it, but I think it just made our relationship that much stronger. We understand each other that much more.